You've heard of the race to the moon, right? Of course you have. But what if I told you that while America was looking up, the Soviet Union was looking, well, somewhere else entirely? To a planet so terrifying, what they found there made them never, ever want to go back. This is the story of the space race you probably haven't heard. I'm not kidding. They poured billions into building probes that were designed for a one-way trip, straight into a complete and total mystery. Their mission? To be the first to land on a planet no one understood, and maybe, just maybe, snap the first pictures from its surface. But what they actually found there? Well, it would change how we see our solar system forever.
So let's rewind a bit. Back in the 1960s, the space race wasn't just about planting flags. It was a full-blown ideological battle, a high-stakes chess match between the US and the USSR, all played out in the vacuum of space.
Now, America was all in on landing a man on the moon. It was this huge, very public, very impressive goal. The Soviets, on the other hand, played it smart. They saw the US was probably going to win that particular race, so they pivoted. They chose a totally different destination. Their thinking was, if America can conquer the moon, the USSR would go one step further. They'd go to Venus.
And you have to understand, the moon was familiar. You could see it with a backyard telescope. But Venus was a complete enigma. It was perpetually wrapped in this thick, impenetrable blanket of clouds. Nobody on Earth had the slightest clue what was down there. It was the solar system's ultimate mystery box, and the Soviets were absolutely determined to be the ones to pry it open. So why Venus? Well, at the time, everyone called it Earth's twin. It's about the same size, it's our cosmic next-door neighbor, and it gets a similar amount of sunlight. For the Soviet Union, finding out what was under those clouds felt like a much bigger prize than landing on the dusty old moon. I mean, what if they found oceans? What if they found lush forests? What if they found life? A discovery like that? That would have been an undisputed checkmate in the space race. With that incredible prize in their sights, the Soviets launched what they called the Venera program. Venera is just the Russian word for Venus. But the planet was not about to give up its secrets easily. What followed was a long, brutal, and honestly a heartbreaking string of failures. I mean, just look at this timeline. In 1961, Venera 1, it just went silent. In 65, Venera 2 died right after leaving orbit. Venera 3 actually made it in 1966, crashing into the planet, which was a historic first, by the way, but it was completely dead on arrival. And then, the real horror began. Venera 4, 5, and 6 were all destroyed on their way down, just utterly flattened by an atmospheric pressure that was way beyond anything the engineers had planned for. For the Soviet scientists, it was this gut-wrenching realization. Their probes weren't even making it to the ground. The atmosphere itself was so thick, so unbelievably powerful, it was squeezing their multi-million-dollar machines as if they were nothing more than empty soda cans. Venus was turning out to be a monster. But you have to give it to the Soviets, they were relentless. They went right back to the drawing board, now faced with a brand new reality. If Venus was a hellscape, then they just have to build a probe that could survive hell.
And this is it, Venera 7. This thing was an absolute beast. It was over-engineered, ridiculously strong, and incredibly heavy. They stripped out almost all the fancy scientific equipment. This probe had one job and one job only: make it to the surface in one piece and send a signal home. And guess what? It worked. After a pretty rough landing, it started transmitting. And the very first piece of data it sent back was the temperature, a staggering 465 degrees Celsius. That's hot enough to melt lead. It's more than twice as hot as your kitchen oven on its highest setting.
Next up was the pressure. The probe reported that it was 90 times greater than the pressure here on Earth. To give you some perspective, that's the same kind of crushing force you'd feel if you were nearly a full kilometer deep in the ocean. The Soviets had just found a runaway greenhouse effect in action, a pretty terrifying cautionary tale for us here on Earth.
And then there was the wind. As the probe was falling, scientists on Earth noticed its radio signal was shifting slightly. It was a Doppler effect, and it let them calculate the wind speed. And they were horrified. The probe was being battered by constant, hurricane-force winds, screaming at 360 kilometers per hour.
But despite these just absolutely horrific conditions, Venera 7 survived. For 23 precious minutes, battered and broken, it sent a weak signal back to Earth, officially becoming the first spacecraft to successfully land on another planet and transmit data.
It was a monumental victory against completely impossible odds.
So they had proven they could survive this alien hell. Now the Soviets set their sights back on the original prize, to finally see what this world actually looked like.
So they designed a whole new series of landers, these incredible 5-ton machines that honestly look like UFOs. They had this super sophisticated landing system with heat shields, parachutes, and a special shock-absorbing ring at the bottom. And, most importantly, they had cameras, protected by little lens caps that were designed to pop off right after landing.
Can you even imagine the frustration after building this incredible machine, surviving a fiery descent, and landing perfectly on another planet? The mission gets foiled by a stuck lens cap. On 3 separate landers, they were completely blind, all that way for nothing. But then, on October 22nd, 1975, with Venera 9, one of the 2 lens caps came off. And it worked. For the first time in human history, we saw the surface of another world. And it wasn't a jungle. It wasn't an ocean, it was just a desolate, alien landscape of sharp volcanic rocks, all sitting under a dim, oppressive orange sky.
The next missions, Venera 13 and 14, were even more advanced. Not only did they send back the first color images from Venus, but Venera 13 also carried a microphone. It actually captured the first sounds from another world, the low roar of that terrifying wind and the distant crackle of what sounded like thunder.
These missions also gave us one of the most bizarre and kinda hilarious failures in space history. See, Venera 14 had this spring-loaded arm that was supposed to test how hard the Venusian soil was. Well, in an almost comical moment of cosmic bad luck, the ejected lens cap landed in the exact spot the arm was supposed to test. The probe then dutifully measured the hardness of its own lens cap. You just can't make this stuff up.
For their final missions, the Soviets decided to change their strategy. Instead of repeatedly trying to survive on that brutal surface, they decided, you know what, let's just map the entire planet from the relative safety of orbit.
So Venera 15 and 16 were orbiters armed with a powerful piece of tech called synthetic aperture radar. Basically, it allowed them to use radio waves to digitally peel back the planet's thick, cloudy veil once and for all. For the first time, they revealed the entire surface, its mountains, volcanoes, and vast canyons.
After 2 decades of struggle, heartbreak, and some incredible triumphs, the Venera program had finally answered the question that started it all. They had opened the secret box.
And this is what they found inside: a surface hot enough to melt lead, air so thick it would crush a submarine, an atmosphere of toxic carbon dioxide, with clouds not of water, but of sulfuric acid, constant terrifying winds, and a ground made of sharp volcanic rock. They had their answer. Venus wasn't Earth's twin. It was a complete and utter inferno. A world so hostile, so utterly alien, that after finally conquering it, there was simply no reason to ever go back.
The Soviet missions painted this terrifyingly complete picture of Venus, but they also left us with a whole bunch of new mysteries. For instance, we now know those thick clouds are made of sulfuric acid, which leaves us with a final, fascinating question to chew on. If that's the case, why doesn't any of that acid rain ever actually reach the ground?